Hello, my name is Richard from Nail Factor, and uh, today I'm going to be talking to you about the basics of Node.js, basics of development, teach you some core concepts, and kind of lay the groundwork to allow you to get started developing with Node.js, and that's what we're going to cover today. This is currently live right now on twitch.tv/nailfactor. And so if you're watching on YouTube, stop by the channel, drop a follow so you'll be alerted when we're live. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need to do is install Node.js, and you can go ahead and go to nodejs.org, and there, when you first get there, it'll have the recommended download for your system. I'm not going to go over that today, as excuse me, you could be on Windows, you could be on Linux, you could be on Ubuntu or something other system, and I'm not going to go over that, but you can always do a Google search for install JS on let's say Mac OS. And here's a tutorial on how to do that. They actually have a package for it, so you don't really need to worry about that. And so yeah, let's just go ahead and get started here. So to ensure that Node is installed, you just do node -- version in a terminal window. And I have version 8.10 installed. That is not the latest version, but I have that installed because I do a lot of work with Lambda functions in AWS, and it just ensures that I'm working on a Node version that will be, my code will be supported when it gets into the cloud, and I won't have to worry about maybe that function doesn't exist or the way I'm doing something doesn't work. So for you, you can make that decision, but I'm just using version 8.10 today. And so the first thing you need to do, just gonna cd out of here, you're gonna make a directory, and I'll just call it node test, right? And then you cd into that directory, and then you would do npm init, and that's going to initialize your node project that you're working on. And so I'll just allow node test to be there, version 1 is fine. Testing node, that's fine. You don't have to worry about that either right now, or that. And if you wanted to put keywords in here, words go here, and you put your name and the license you want to use. We don't really care. And then it's going to ask you to confirm it. And now you're ready to actually open your node project. And so the first thing you're going to see, I'm going to delete this file just so that you can really see it. The first thing you're going to see when you go in here, and I'm using Visual Studio Code. I just prefer it when working with JavaScript. You could use any text editor or IDE or whatever you want to use, Sublime Text, it doesn't really matter. Anything that's a text editor will really work. I just find that Visual Studio Code works great. If you come in here, the only thing you're going to see is a package.json. You're going to see this differs a little bit from what I had in there, right? And so, yeah, we're not really going to worry about this right now, but we'll come back to that. So we're going to create our first file here. We'll just call it testing.js for now, because we're just goofing around, right? And so the first thing I want to teach you is how would you write a comment. A comment is something that is going to be descriptive about the code you're writing. so that when someone comes and reads your code, that they can understand what you were thinking when you wrote it, or maybe describe what some variable is for, what some function is intended to do, and those sorts of things. And comments are really important when writing code. And so in Node.js, there's kind of two ways to do that. There's the double / and this is my comment. If I did, hello world, this is my comment, right? When I went to run this, I'm gonna save it first. So when I went to run this, you're gonna see there's an error, right? But if I added the double in, I don't know why I hit enter, but if I added the double thing there, you'll see now, oh, I gotta save it. You'll see, now we'll run it, and you'll see, it doesn't throw that error. Another way to do a comment is with a /*, and you would terminate it with the */, and this is my comment. Another way of kind of more approved etiquette way of doing this is like so. And you'll actually see if I started this way, it would automatically VS Code would automatically fill it in for me, and this is on the, like that. And so if you're going to be writing, okay, there's two ways to write comments here. If you're just going to be writing a comment on a single line, that's how you would do your comment. If you were going to be commenting on multiple lines, this is how you would do your comment. This is my comment, and it is kind of long, and I'm just going to type some gibberish just so you can see. Here is more of my comment, right? So if you so if you're just needing to write a comment on, just one line of comment, this is how the style you would use. And if you were doing a multi-line comment, this is the style you would use. And it's just kind of a thing that has been decided over the years because, this just gets kind of right. Redundant, right? So that's a no. Bad, don't do this. Okay, bad the developer, you don't want to do that. Okay, if I've lost you on the comments, I really apologize. And if I lost you because I didn't spell right, I apologize too. So, just again, this is how you would write comments. And you'll see here, when I go to my command line and I try to run this script, right, it doesn't do anything because there's nothing there. Those are just comments to be seen by the developer, not going to be put on the command line. Now, if I did want to put something out to the command line, right, I would use console.log, okay? And we'll just say hello world. Generally, when you're first starting and developing, you're going to create a hello world app, and so this is our hello world app. And we'll take out our comments, and we'll add a comment here. When you want to print something to command line, use console.log. And I'll save this and I'll run it for you. And you'll see that it just shows hello world. and you know, we've made something that does a little thing that prints that out. Now, when you want to print something to the command line that warns someone, so if something's not right and it's not going to cause our code to crash or stop working, you just want to warn the user, and you would do console.warn. Something is not right. Results could be off. Okay, I'll save that and run that and show that to you. So there's our hello world, and there's our something not right. I wonder. Alright, some thought maybe it would be another color, but anyways. Now, when you want to print something, you want to use, so when you want to print out something to the command line that's an error, you want to use console.error. An error has occurred. We'll save that, and I'll go ahead and show that to you. Oh, this is... And so what I'll do, so that's how you put stuff out to the command line. Sometimes here it's not really showing the way I wanted it to, right? But that is console. So console, I'll just use the right comments here. Console is what you use to output information to the command line. You use console.log for just printing out information. You use console.error for, or we'll just go to warn, to alert your user that something is not right. And you use console.error to show an error to the user. So that's the basics of outputting data to the command line, and we're just going to go ahead and move this comment to the top. And some other node etiquette. You always want to leave a line at the bottom. Just an empty, new line at the bottom. It's just something that if you're running a linter, they prefer. And something I didn't go over is you notice that each line of these, each line has a semicolon where there's code. Sorry, my key popped up. And that semicolon tells JavaScript that I'm done doing the work I'm doing on this line. And so it's just a termination. JavaScript doesn't, well, some interpreters don't require it. And there's some developers out there that prefer never putting a semicolon, but it causes your code to be clean, and it would allow us to you know, minify this, oops, and it would run both of these. See how it ran? It didn't even do it. Oh, I didn't save it. Okay. So now you'll see how hello world and more stuff, but when this got minified, right? Now it's gonna throw an error, unexpected identifier. So, and this is not something you necessarily want to make a habit of, but I'm just showing you why it's useful, because you could do a console.log here, and you could do something like this. Let's just say the text that you have to type is really long and needs to take up right? And so this just tells the interpreter now that, okay, this is going to go on for a few lines, and now I can stop. So it's just good programming practice to have those semicolons in there at the end of the line, and I'll show you when to use them and when not to use them. So that's great, right? We've learned how to write comments. We've learned how to put data out to the command line. And so now I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to name it working with variables.js. Okay. So now we're going to be working with variables. If you've ever done programming in a browser, you've probably seen this before. And so like in a browser, you would do var my variable equals some stuff, right? Well, in NodeJS, so this works in NodeJS, right? So if I console.log my variable, right, this is going to work. So if I do node, that's going to work, right? Okay, but it's not, if someone looked at this, they would think that you weren't very familiar with Node. So we're going to take this. Oops. Don't do this when writing NodeJS. This is a no-no. Okay. So what the best practice is you want to use const. Here, actually, I'll go back to my variable here, or my comment. Best practice to use const unless you are going to set it later. So the general first rule is to use const unless you're going to be changing it. So when in doubt, use const. The other thing you would use is let. And what you use when, so I'm going to check. Const you use when it's not going to get set by something else. Let you use when it is going to be set by something else, like more of your code is going to change it. So const my variable equals not going to change, right? And so this is I should have stepped back a little bit. We break this down. So this is telling, you know, JavaScript that something is going to happen, and this is a variable name. So just go back. This is a variable, and then the third part, this is equals. This is, I'm setting my variable. You could always just do this with, oops, without the equals, and that just says my variable is going to be null. It's going to be empty. But now you're telling it that my variable is going to be whatever goes here, right? And because this is a string, I'm bad. You want to use single quotes. It's just the preferred way in a lot of linting with JS. You want to use single quotes, and so my variable's not going to change, and end with the semicolon, and I'll just, you know, see, it's not going to change. Now, in my code, if I tried to take my variable and set it to, I did it again. I am changing this, right? I'm going to get an error because assignment to constant variable. So a constant is something that is never going to change. And if you use a let, now if this is a let, right, and I save it, it's going to let me change it. It will allow me to update it, and so now my variable has changed. And so now I'm going to clear this part out. And so now I'm going to, so let n equal 1. Let b equal 2. We'll just do a, b, c. I'm sorry. These are never going to change. So there needs to be a const, right? And c equal 2 plus 1. And so now we're doing some math here. And you'll see that 3 is indeed printed out. Now, if I wanted to say the total, or I did it again. So if I wanted to like have the total before that, what I would want to do is use it. I don't know if it's a tilde, but it's on the tilde key, and it's these kind of angled quotes. And so total is, and then $, bracket, C bracket. And what that's going to do is print out the total is 3. And so what this is trying to do is concatenate our variable of C in this string. Something you could do is like this, right? and then plus C, right? And that's going to print out the same thing, but you notice how the first line is going to be a clean code preferred, right? Because that line there is easier to read when you're going through here than this, because your brain has to process this, right? And it's also, it could be a little more error prone, and if you care about the formatting of the string. So when you put two strings together in development, it's called concatenate. So when concat two strings use this way. When two strings don't use this way. Okay, so there we've seen some very basic manipulation of variables. And now let's say we wanted to do this with strings. Const A equals hello. Const B equals string. Const C equals and again, when concatenating strings, you want to use this way. That's use this way. And when you don't want to use this way. So you don't want to do this, even though I'll show you how to do it, just in case you want to be stubborn. And we'll just go ahead and make this D. And then I'll error log this out, or console log this out. C. I'll save it. Clear. And you'll see it does the same thing, but just look, see this just looks neater, right? So we want to keep it that way. And so that is, working with strings and with numbers. Something else you could do that's out there is a Boolean, right? This is a Boolean. A Boolean is true or false. Oops, can't spell that. So here's const B, and that would equal false, right? So these two are Booleans. And so what would you do with the Boolean? You would generally use them to be returned, or use it in a if statement, and that is something that we haven't covered yet. But so an if statement is like this. You do if something, then this, right? And then so we'll just worry about A for now. And so what do we need to put in here? So if A, so one thing we could do is if A, we could do if A equal true, copy this line. So first if, second if, and so now if I run this as it is, right, all of them are going to print, okay? And so again, now we're working with ifs here, okay? Kind of moved a little bit away from just the variables. We're adding some logic to process our variables, right? Now, if I change A to be not Boolean, so we'll move that because it's no longer true, and I'm going to just add some text here, right? And only the first one is going to equate. Notice how the second two didn't equate. But if I change A to 1, oops. Notice how now both the first and second one evaluate. So here you can't see it because I have font ligatures, and so I'll tie it together, but there are 3 equals here and there are 2 equals here. If you did this, right, you're gonna get an error. I'll show you that real quick. See, it threw an error because it's trying to assign a variable. You don't want to do that. Whenever you do text equal something, that's just going to try to assign the variable. So you don't want to do that. So here's the preferred method. If A is if A is expected to be a Boolean, you want to use 3 equal signs. Now, if you expect A to be 1 or true, use 2 equal. And I'm going to change this comment. However, this is just generally considered a bad practice, and this is for if you just want A to be something, right? And you don't care what it is, you just want to ensure that it's not empty, that it's not null. I can show you what null is here real quick. So if I did const b, right, and just cut this for now, so I'm taking that out. In a console.log b, right? See, it kind of threw an error there. That's B being empty. So now, if I did if not B, right? So let's bring our stuff back here. So if not B, well, we'll leave it. No, we'll just work with B right now, okay? So if not B, so I'm sorry, if B, right? Because you want to ensure that B is something. If not B, so, and I'll show you the negatives now. Not equal. True. And so now if I run this, no, it's not gonna let me. I'll just say let. Because you never want to have a constant that being empty. I apologize. I should have never done that. So let B, right? B is not set. B is not true. B is definitely not true. So now if I change this to false, well, let's change it to 0 because this is more of an appropriate use case. You'll see. Well, let's change this to. Sometimes I'm dumb. So this is just another way of looking at this. So now you'll see that this is a more appropriate representation because see here, if we did this, see it's neither B and it's neither empty, right? It's not false either. So I'm sorry. Back it up here. Alright. I had a brain fart, I got really nervous, I apologize. So, now let's do this again. See, here it didn't print out because B is not false. And so B is not true here either, but it's not technically false. And B is not set. And so now if I do set B to false, now it's B is not set, B is not true, B is not false. And also, if I just do let B, right? It just comes up that B is not set. Because B isn't false, you know, if you do now console.log B, right? It's undefined. That's all it is. Is that B is undefined. It's null, it's empty. There's nothing there, and so it's not false. It's just not set. And so those are some of the things that, in this use case, B is not set or not true. This is just saying B is not false. B is a falsy value like 0 or false. And this is just saying B is for sure false. Again, so this is how you say not B. So this is one way of kind of saying false, but it's not exactly true. It's just saying that it could be empty, or it could be false, or it could be 0. And so this is kind of a catch-all. And this is a use case where B is going to be 0 or false. And this is a catch case that B is false, and you know it's a Boolean, you know it's going to be set. And so that's something to think about in if statements. So I'll show you the truth. Oops, I lost it. I'll show you the truth once again. So if A is set and not 0. And then again, I'll run that. Right. So this would be B is not set. B is 0 or false. B is falsy value, 0 or false. And B is for sure false. So now let's go ahead and just make so that all of these, what? So A is set, that's all that this is doing, that it has a value. This is A is true, or it's 1. And then A is true, it's for sure true. It can't be 1, and it's not just because it's set. That A is for sure equal to true, and that again that's 3 equals. And then this is just saying, okay, B is not set, or B is false. And you just have apostrophe in the variable name. And this is just saying that with 2 equal signs, that B is either false or it's a 0. It's a falsy value. It's either 0 or false. And then this is saying that B is for sure false. And so, you know, those were some things to keep in mind with if statements. Now, something we could do, right, is we could combine something with this. So if A and not B. So if you have the ampersand here, right, that says that, okay, A has to be set and B has to be a false value or not set. So those two things have to line up. So A A is something and B is nothing or a falsy value. You could do if A, so you could do like if not A or not B, right? So either A is nothing or a falsy value, or B is nothing or a falsy value. And these nothing should be empty. And so, you know, that's combining two variables in my statement now. And so both of those will work. Now, if I did if A and B, right? So that just means that both A and B have to be set and not 0. So A and B are something and not 0 or false. Now this one isn't going to work because both A and B have to match. So it's important that when you're working with if statements that you think about the logic of your code and that you've covered all use cases, right? And so something that we could do here is do else if A. We'll just do else if B first. Console.log B is something. Else if A so an else if, kind of getting ahead of myself, but an else if is just saying, okay, if I don't meet the criteria of this, so match both, right? If I don't meet the criteria of the first if, then do this. If B is true, is something. And this is basically saying the other two were not met. So if in this case A is something, right? And then finally you could get to if none of these are true, A and B are empty. And now if I run this, you'll see that A is something. Now if we come up here and set A to false, that will cause our logic to fall into so this one hit because A or B are false, and then down here it hit here because it's not, A and B are definitely not set, and B and A are not, you know, set. They're both set to false, and so now it fell into here. And so that's pretty much covering if statements. All right. So we've kind of gone over some concepts now. Kind of went over variables, how to set. Well, first off, we went over comments and what they're for. We went over basic variables of numbers, strings, and booleans. We went over the basics of if statements. And so now we're going to go ahead and getting started with writing functions. So I'll go over here and I'm going to save this. Just save it as functions.js. And so, you know, it's great, right, that we can put stuff out on the command line. We can, you know, do a little bit with variables, but now I'm going to teach you kind of how to set those. And if you're familiar with JavaScript in the browser, you're probably kind of familiar with doing, you know, function bob. Oh, we'll just do function x, and then we'll have a and b, right? And our function is going to return something, right? It's going to return a plus b. And so this is just real basic, and so we will do const c equals x a b. And sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Const a equal 1, const b equal 2. Console.log the sum of a and b is c. And so first off, I'm just going to comment these out for now. And we're going to go ahead and see nothing happens, right? So our functions are loaded in this JavaScript file, but nothing's going to run because we haven't invoked that function. And so now we're going to uncomment these lines, and const c is going to invoke our function x. Well, I'm going to even take it back a step here, right? So we have our a and b, and we need to invoke our function x. A, b, right? Oh, I apologize. Copy this. And we're going to alter our function a little bit. And we're going to get there, right? And so this is invoking our function right now. So this allows JavaScript to run our function x. Oh. Let's see, a plus b. So now that's invoking our function. Again, if we take this away, it's not going to do anything. We have to actually invoke our function. And that's how that works. You have to invoke a function to run the logic that's contained in there. And so one of the things, so that's one of the ways we could do it, right? And another way we can do this. Is const x equals function. We'll just call this function y. And again, if I save it and run it, nothing's going to happen because we haven't invoked anything. So we would just do y, a, comma, b. Right? And so what we can do, and so this is another way to write it. The final way I'm going to show you is, I believe, the best practice. So the other two, yeah, you could do these, but this way is really what you want to do. So we'll just call it const sum. Add the numbers, right? And so const add the numbers. And notice how I use camel casing. I'm not using snake casing. When you write your function name, you want it to be the first letter is lowercase, excuse me, and the second word in the function, you want your function name to be descriptive, right? And so the second word and the next third word and the words after that has an uppercase letter for the first word in it. And that's called camel case, and that's what the general best practices of what you want to use when working in NodeJS and in JavaScript. And so this is what's referred to as an arrow function. And you want to have a semicolon here, and I'd want a semicolon here too. It's best practice, I'm sorry. And this is called an arrow function. And I could do return, and we'll just do const c equal a plus b, return, or I'll just console log here for a second more. And I see a couple typos here. Again, if I do this, it's not going to do anything. I have to invoke my function. I have to call add the numbers a and b, and you'll this isn't y anymore. This is, you'll see that our add the numbers function was not called correctly because I used And so now you'll see that, our add the numbers function is called. And some neat things you could do with this. I was going to get into returns earlier and I didn't really get there. So now I will just go ahead and return C, right? And then I'll do const add the numbers and print A, comma B, arrow function. Oh, yeah. And I'll do const C equal add the numbers A and B. And so now I'm invoking our add the numbers function. And now I'm just going to console.log the result of that, right? Okay, so now we'll go ahead and show you that that works. But something you can do that's neat with arrow functions is, since I just want to do math here, is I can return a recipe, and because it's only one line, I only want to return something, so put a comment here. And so this actually gets into the next step with comments. When you're writing code, you want to comment on your function. So I would do like add brief or add description, right? This function adds two numbers, returns the result. When you just want the function to return something, and you're using And so when you're doing an arrow function, see, I'm just, because like before, if you did the function like up here, so this is our function x, and we want to return, right? So we don't have to do that. This moves all this logic to one line. It's neat and clean. You don't have to worry about missing a bracket or anything like that. And so, you know, that is something that is useful with arrow functions and why they're preferred. And so back to the comments here, you want to label your variable, and it's an integer. I'll remove this because integer a, the first number. And then finally, you would want to do return the integer, sum of a, b. And so you want to write these style of comments so that when someone comes to read your code, they understand what's going on. I'm just gonna copy these. And then we don't need a net return here because it doesn't return anything. And so that right there is the basics of working with functions in Node.js. The next thing I'm going to teach you how to do is, when I come back, is how to create a class in Node.js and then leverage that class. And we're going to use the same functions we have here and create a class. Alright, so we've kind of went over the basics of comments, logging data to the command line, working with variables, and if statements, and now we've learned how to do functions. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to create modules and classes, chunks of code that we can include in other code, so we could reuse the same code, the same functions, so we don't have to rewrite them like 5 or 6 times or whatever to make your code dry. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. So let's go ahead and get started on creating our first module. I have created a folder in my library called lib, in my code called lib, which stands for library, and I've created a file in that folder called my first module. And so I'm going to go over here and copy this code that we wrote in our functions. And so in order to get the module that we've written, we include our module the following way. And since this is not a publicly available package that we've downloaded from NPM, and it's one that we've written, we have to do a period / and then the path to our module, and that just lets Node to know that I'm loading this from something I've written and not from a publicly available module that I've downloaded. And we'll get there. Not today. In the second session, we'll start working with Express or something like that. So I've got my module, and if I want to do add the numbers and print 2 and 4 and save this, I'm going to clear this. NP or node and working with modules.js. You're going to see that, oh, there's no function, right? So we need to let Node know that, because right now both these functions are private functions and only available to this module. And so we need to we need to label some as public. And the way that we do that is module.exports the function name that we want it to do, and add the numbers and print, right? And now our code will allow us to do that. Oh, and print. So let me remove this again so you can see that it doesn't work. line, comma this line, it allows me to use this function because now it's in my Jesus, I am boosted today. Okay, one more time. Sometimes I wish I were a computer and wouldn't make mistakes. Okay, so now that you see that doesn't work, this allows us to make it public. And now it does work, right? So that's all. Fine. So this is, you know, one way to do it. But since we only have one function that we really care that our users use, we can just do this instead. Right, and then all my typos wouldn't have mattered because we could just remove this now, and that's how it works. So this, it's kind of something you would want to do if only one function is publicly available, and then you would name it like add number, right? And so that is working with modules. Another way of kind of doing a module, it's not my preferred way of doing it, but I'll go ahead and show you. So we'll take this code here that we have, and I've just created another JavaScript file called my second module prototype, and so I'll show you how to kind of do this. So it's kind of like a class actually more than a module, but so I'm going to do const mod equals a function, and it doesn't really do anything. I don't do anything, right? And our modules at export is going to be mod, right? And now I haven't made any functions that are globally available for this, and so what we need to do is change this from a constant, because I want this to be publicly available. I shouldn't have said globally if I said that. Publicly available is to do mod.prototype dot that, and so now modules.exports to this, and always include a new line at the end. And so working with our second module, we'll do const add equal require lib my second module prototype, and we'll just give this an uppercase add. And what we need to do now is const equal new add, and then do add dot just set up sorry, again, I boosted. So now we'll run that again, and you'll see that, so now this is just a new class, it's an object, if you will, that you have to do new, so it's not, it's not like static, right? You actually have to substantiate this object before you can work with it. Whereas here we don't have to do it, it's just like a static function in PHP where you don't have to, do that kind of thing. And so this is an object that every time this class we're designing it, that every time we want to use it, we want to create a new one. And the final way I'm going to show you how to do a class, and this is where we're going to end today, is and here we're actually going to do okay. So you start out with the word class, and this is the name of your class, and you substantiate it this way. And now we're going to go ahead and go to our first module that we wrote here and copy these functions. And we need to just clean this up a little bit. And we need to remove the const because we don't need it. So in order to make this private, right, you would put it outside of here. And you want to define it kind of before you actually use it. So you're going to put it at the top. Remove counts from here. And now we'll go back in here. Let's take this stuff. Oh. First class. Changes from an arrow function. I'm sorry, you don't even need that because it's a class. Alright, I apologize. So, when it's in the add class, you don't need a function, and I don't think you can use an arrow function. You just do it this way. I really prefer arrow functions, so I don't do the second two ways, but I just kind of wanted to show you that you could do it this way. And so that is 3 ways of creating classes or modules, or kind of whatever you want to call them. I like to refer to them as modules because typically only one of these is really a class, right? that should be there. So yeah, let's kind of review here. So in our testing, we learned how to properly do comments. When you do multi-line comments, you want to use this structure. When you just do single line comments, you want to use this structure. When you're printing out to the command line, you use console.log for just information you want to print out. When you want to print out something to warn someone that something is going on, you want to use console.warn. And when you're printing something to the command line that's an error, you want to use console.error. When working with variables, you want to use const and let. You use const when it's not going to change and it's not going to get set by something else. You want to use let when it's going to be set by something else, like another function could change it, or later on in the code that value isn't going to be the same as it was when it started. For if statements, this one got kind of hairy. So basic if statement, oops, caps lock. If A equals false. So first off, if not A, right, this means A is a falsy value or an empty or not set. If A equal false, this just means A is a falsy value, and that is just 0 or false. And then if A equal false, this just means A is for sure false. And you can combine, you can have multiple conditions in an if statement. So if A is true and not B, again, then you do something, or you could do if A is empty or B is empty. And then, so in the AND statement, both of these have to match. In the OR statement, just one of them has to be true. And you can do else statements. So if not A, else. So that means, this means A is that A is set with either true, 0, 1, or is not empty, right? And so you could do an else statement there. And so if you come back here, so this just accounts for all the possible scenarios. So that's pretty much if functions, or if statements. And then we got into functions. And there's a couple ways of doing it. There's some preferred ways. You could just do function X, and these are the parameters that can get passed in. So here we set variable A and B to 1 and 2, and then you would just call that function by x 1, 2, right? And count sum would be the value this would return the sum of A and B. And when writing, and this is a third way that you could do, and then so the second way you could write a function is you could create a variable and have an equal function, and then the best practice is to have a colon after this, because after you have a variable, you always semicolon to terminate that line. Still, I didn't know it's done. And then when writing a function, you want to comment on it with the following format. Have a description that kind of gives an overview of what the function does. Have the parameters and what the expected type is supposed to be. And the name and a description. And then at return to say what it's returning. It's an integer, and that's the sum of A and B. And this is calling the function. We wrote our first module, which is kind of like a class, and we said that this is a private function, and so we don't need to export it. We only want it to run in here. We use prototyping to create kind of the old style class in JavaScript. And then finally, we created our first class. And this is a more traditional style of class. And this is our private function. And this is our public function. And this is how we export it. So I really appreciate you stopping by the stream. I hope you enjoyed it. I made a few mistakes, and I apologize, but I plan to do another session on NodeJS, and we'll get into working with packages from NPM, how to install them, working more with the package.json, and kind of creating our first project and actually, publishing it somewhere to the NPM repository to be used by other people. So I thank you for stopping by. If you liked this stream, please follow. If you see this on YouTube, if you like it, please leave a like and a follow. You can always go to neilfactor.com and get our newest videos from there, and get our link to our Twitch channel and our YouTube channel. Again, my name is Richard, and I really appreciate you stopping by. And remember, anyone can code. It's just sitting down and taking the time to learn how to do it right. And when you write good, clean, consistent, quality code, you'll be in high demand. Thank you. Have a good day.